Good morning, America. Bracing for the possible fallout over the Mueller report. The calls for the special counsel's findings to be released fully and immediately. The focus now on Attorney General William Barr. How much will be in his report to Congress, and will the public get to see it? Reaction from the White House and Democrats on the Hill. We're covering all the angles, including the major political battle that could be brewing.
Chemical fire flare-up, the massive fire at this Houston storage facility, reigniting, sparking renewed concerns about air quality and a new lawsuit with parts of the Houston ship channel shutting down.
Breaking overnight, officer acquitted. The white officer who fatally shot an unarmed black teen in the back. Cleared of murder charges. The family's reaction and the protests in Pittsburgh.
Priest attack. The stunning scene. A man with a knife rushing the altar. The priest escaping serious injury. Was it a case of divine intervention? What he is saying this morning.
And bracket busters. The huge upsets overnight. Underdogs surprising their opponents. While Duke's Zion Williamson makes an impressive March Madness debut. Plus, the amazing leapfrog move into the sidelines.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
And good Saturday morning, everybody. Dan and Eva are off, but we're thrilled to have Tom Yamas and Janae Norman with us this morning. Great to have you both.
Everyone left you? What happened?
That's right. It's a busy morning, so everybody took off. But we are here, and we have a jam-packed show. Let's start with that major development. Special Counsel Robert Mueller turning in his long-awaited report. Here's what we know right now. A senior justice official confirming to ABC News Robert Mueller is not recommending any further indictments. Attorney General William Barr could deliver his first summary of the Mueller report to Congress as soon as this weekend.
Both Democrats and Republicans in Congress are calling for the release of the full report. The 22-month investigation costing $25 million and leading to 37 indictments.
And those indictments include 6 President Trump associates, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, one-time campaign chairman Paul Manafort, Deputy Campaign Manager Rick Gates, Foreign Policy Advisor George Papadopoulos, personal attorney Michael Cohen, and longtime political operative Roger Stone. All but Stone have pleaded guilty. We do have team coverage this morning. Let's begin with ABC's Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas in Washington. Pierre, good morning.
Tom, good morning. The news rapidly unfolding with a surprise. The Attorney General says he plans to make Bob Mueller's conclusions known to the public as soon as this weekend.
Finally, Robert Mueller's work is nearly done. On Friday, a security officer handed over his final report to Attorney General Bill Barr. In a letter, Barr officially notifying Congress the special counsel has concluded his investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election and related matters. The contents of the report, a tightly guarded secret.
I have no idea about the Mueller report.
And so the final act begins. For nearly 2 years, an epic face-off. A president loudly proclaiming his innocence.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion.
And a legendary prosecutor and lawman who has not spoken publicly in 22 months. The president relentlessly attacking the special counsel on Twitter. According to the New York Times, railing against the investigation more than 1,000 times. Robert Mueller doing his talking only through charges filed in court. 37 indictments, among them those Russians suspected of hacking the Clinton campaign and those who secretly waged a social media war aimed at sowing divisions among Americans. And there have been multiple guilty pleas involving some of the most powerful people in President Trump's inner circle. Some of its top political strategists and advisors now convicted, and even longtime friends and family members caught up in the investigation. The special counsel's first major indictments shook Washington. Mueller going after 2 of the very top people in the campaign not named Trump. Campaign Chairman Paul Manafort.
Paul Manafort has done a fantastic job.
And his former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates.
Mr. Gates, any response to the charges, sir?
Manafort and Gates charged and convicted of bank and tax fraud, but also lying to investigators. In the process, Manafort revealed to have provided a suspected Russian intelligence officer campaign polling data. The next target, Michael Flynn, the one-time campaign advisor who famously chatted at the Republican convention.
Lock her up. That's right. That's right. Lock her up.
Flynn became Trump's first national security advisor and he also has the distinction of being the highest-ranking member of the Trump administration charged so far.
Mike Flynn is a fine person.
Flynn pleading guilty to lying to the FBI and administration officials about his contacts with the Russian ambassador. Also a secret early target for Mueller, the president's personal attorney of 10 years, the fixer, who worked just down the hall from Trump, Michael Cohen.
I always liked Michael. And he's a good person.
Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about Russia, and he admitted to fraud and campaign finance violations, implicating Trump in a separate plot to silence a porn star and former Playboy playmate with hush money to bury alleged affairs.
So I just heard that they broke into the office of one of my personal attorneys, good man, and it's a disgraceful situation.
A relationship completely transformed.
And I will do anything to protect Mr. Trump.
The two men now mortal enemies.
He is a racist. He is a con man. And he is a cheat.
He's a weak person and not a very smart person.
The president's family also caught up in the investigation. Mueller locked in on what critics have called suspicious contacts of Trump associates with the Kremlin, including that infamous meeting at Trump Tower, New York, where a number of Russians showed up promising dirt on Hillary Clinton. In attendance, the president's son, Don Jr., son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort.
It was such a nothing. There was nothing to tell.
And there has been a parade of witnesses to a grand jury here in Washington, many involving Trump associates like friend and longtime political advisor Roger Stone, who are being investigated for their possible ties to WikiLeaks, which published damaging hacked Democratic emails stolen by the Russians. Stone now indicted and awaiting trial, accused of lying to Congress.
Yet after all those witnesses and countless hours of investigation, not a single American so far has been directly charged with conspiring with the Russians to undermine the election. And much of what Mueller has found remains shrouded in secrecy. But now the key questions. What does Mueller have to say about whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia? And perhaps now we finally get some answers about whether Mueller believes the president tried to obstruct justice, Tom.
We all wait to see and hear that. Pierre, as you mentioned, the Attorney General has told congressional leaders he may brief them as early as this weekend, which seems to be a quick turnaround for a nearly 2-year investigation. What does that tell us, if anything, and when can we expect the public at least to see portions of that report?
That is a quick turnaround, Tom. As you noted, he is going to provide a summary of Mueller's key findings by the end of this weekend, so he has a pretty good idea of what he wants to say about the bottom line conclusions of Mueller's investigation. As for how much time it will take to get a fuller accounting, our sources are saying that may be many days, if not weeks away, Tom.
All right, Pierre, I'll take it from here. Thank you so much from Washington for us. Also, reaction pouring in swiftly overnight from members of Congress making a bipartisan call for transparency and the release of the full findings. ABC's senior national correspondent Terry Moran is at the White House with how the president and lawmakers are now responding to this long-awaited report. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. The president is on vacation, basically. He's down in Florida, a little R&R down at Mar-a-Lago, but he and his allies are declaring victory and vindication this morning, perhaps prematurely, perhaps not. The Democrats and others, as you mentioned, are clamoring for the full release of that report and the underlying evidence. They may run into some legal hurdles there. And Robert Mueller, well, he's headed home. They're going to be moving the furniture out of his office beginning next week, and he is leaving this job the way he performed it, without a word.
All eyes are now on Attorney General William Barr because he is the person who will now decide how much of Robert Mueller's report is made public.
It's imperative for Mr. Barr to make the full report public and provide its underlying documentation and findings to Congress.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are clamoring for full disclosure. Within minutes after the Attorney General's announcement of the delivery of the Mueller report, a blizzard of statements and tweets. And then this stunning statement by Attorney General Barr in a letter to Congress. I am reviewing the report and anticipate that I may be in a position to advise you of the special counsel's principal conclusions as soon as this weekend. At Barr's confirmation hearing, Democrats pressured him for maximum disclosure.
I am going to make as much information available as I can, consistent with the rules and regulations that are part of the special counsel regulations.
Some top Democrats are calling for Mueller to testify in person before Congress about his findings.
If the Justice Department doesn't release the whole report or tries to keep parts of it secret, we will certainly subpoena the parts of the report.
On the other side of the aisle, Republicans sound content that this probe has finally come to an end. Former Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley writing, throughout this prolonged investigation, which cost tens of millions in taxpayer dollars and included aggressive surveillance tools, we still haven't seen any evidence of collusion. And the president, who has attacked, insulted, and sought to undermine Robert Mueller for the last 22 months.
But the entire thing has been a witch hunt. They won't find any collusion. It doesn't exist.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. There was no nothing.
Now says he wants the public to see the full report.
Let it come out. Let people see it. That's up to the Attorney General.
And Terry Moran back now live with us from the White House. Terry, this push now to release Mueller's report to the public is also quickly becoming a big issue on the campaign trail.
It sure has, Wood. You know, there are so many Democrats running for president, but they are unanimous on this. They want transparency. They are clamoring for the full release, some for that underlying evidence. But in a sense, the closure in this report, and depending on what Attorney General Barr says is in it, we'll find out this weekend, might be good for Democrats. A lot of them are dreaming big policies, big ideas for the country. They need to get those to the voters. And if they get tied up in something that happened back in 2016, it actually might hamper them. But right now they are unanimous. Release the report, transparency for the voters. Guys?
In the near future, we will be hearing about it. All right, Terry, thanks so much. Let's bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, right now. And Dan, what we do know is that there will be no more indictments. What does that mean for the president specifically?
Well, it means a huge sigh of relief for those around the president. I mean, Don Jr., Jared Kushner, they've been all these discussions, et cetera. Huge sigh of relief for all of them. With regard to the president, we don't know exactly what it means. There's one of two options. Number one, it could mean that there simply wasn't evidence to charge him with any crime, either obstruction of justice or any kind of collusion crime. Or number two, and this is why the Democrats want to see more about the report, was there a decision made, we can't indict a sitting president, and therefore no matter what we have, it's irrelevant. That's the critical question we don't know the answer to. Which one of those two things was it?
Now, the special counsel's office never directly interviewed the president. His legal team only allowed a questionnaire. But his troubles are far from over because we know the Southern District of New York is also investigating matters connected to the president.
Right. There are a number of local U.S. attorneys, federal prosecutors around the country who are continuing to investigate issues that came out of the special counsel investigation. But remember, all of those offices ultimately report to one person, the Attorney General, William Barr. So if there's going to be any high-profile indictment at this point, Barr would have to sign off on it. The special counsel had more independence than do these various local U.S. attorneys. So I think those who are sort of counting on big things coming out of these local U.S. attorneys' offices may end up getting disappointed.
And real quick, no chance that office holds this until a next administration comes in.
No, but they could decide that there are certain crimes that have been committed that a sitting president can't be charged with, but if he's not president, then he could be charged with. That's the sort of thing that still could potentially be on the table.
All right, Dan, thanks so much for that.
All right.
Tom, joining us now from Texas is ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd. Matthew, great to have you. It's been, you know, we've been discussing the Mueller report on this show almost 2 years now. We're still waiting to see exactly what's in it. But one of the early headlines, no new indictments here. If the president is not directly implicated in any collusion or conspiracy, politically, is this a win for Trump? And what are the risks for Democrats as they plow forward with their investigations?
Well, as I said yesterday, I actually think this is firmer ground for the president since he's been shadowboxing basically this report for 2 years, almost his entire presidency. But I think it's way too early for them to celebrate politically. It's, speaking of a boxing match, it's like celebrating you didn't get knocked out, even though you've lost every round up until now. And so I think it's better news for the president. It's not as bad as they thought, but there's still a whole bunch of things ahead. And now we're entered into a major political fight.
And let's talk more of that because, as we mentioned, the Democrats are calling for transparency and the release of the entire Mueller report. That decision in the hands of the new AG, Attorney General William Barr. The White House is already preparing to claim executive privilege to essentially keep some of this information secret. How much of a political fight still lies ahead?
It's going to be a major fight, and obviously it's going to all be over what portions of the Mueller report and how much of it get released to the public. If I were giving advice to the president and his team, I would see the more you can encourage to be put out, the better. Because if it's good news, then you should have no reluctance about putting it out. If it's bad news, ultimately bad news always comes out, and you're much better off it coming out quickly and fully at the beginning instead of trickling out in the end. So if I were the president's strategist, I'd want full transparency on this. Get it out, even if there's things in the report that are very concerning.
Many people have been calling this the end of the beginning, so we'll see how it all plays out. Matthew Dowd from Texas, always a pleasure. Great to hear from you.
So that report wrapping up, but obviously still a lot that will be happening. A lot to look forward to.
And we could get new information at any moment once they brief congressional leaders, so we'll be watching that.
We should also mention ABC News coverage. If anything comes out throughout the day, we'll break in. And Tom, you'll have much more on World News tonight.
We definitely will.
All right, well, now to breaking news in Syria overnight, where U.S.-backed forces have declared victory over ISIS. The Syrian Democratic Forces liberating the last ISIS stronghold, putting an end to the so-called caliphate the Islamic State group declared back in 2014. At its height, ISIS controlled a huge stretch of territory across most of Syria and parts of neighboring Iraq. Well, back here at home to that chemical plant fire in Texas that's been raising concerns about air quality for days. The state attorney general filing a lawsuit as that fire flared up again. ABC's Alex Perez is on the scene in Houston with the latest. Alex, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Janae. It has been a nerve-wracking week for people who live around this chemical plant. Every time they think authorities have things under control, there's another flare-up.
Authorities this morning closely monitoring tanks at this chemical plant in Deer Park, Texas, after this serious flare-up Friday.
It appears as though that the product that has leaked out of the ITC plant is now in the ditch, and that too is on fire.
Two of the tanks, filled with components to make gasoline, nail polish remover, and glue, reigniting, sending plumes of dangerous dark smoke into the air.
The ditch that all of the chemicals and the foam that was released in the past 24 hours, that is where the second plume of smoke appears to be coming from.
It's the third flare-up since Wednesday, when authorities extinguished the blaze after it burned for 4 days. A spokeswoman for ITC, the company that owns the plant, issuing a tearful apology.
We will make this right. We will fix it, and we will make it right.
Authorities this weekend working to empty some 20,000 barrels of liquid from a charred tank that leaked benzene into the air and led to a temporary shelter-in-place order. The chemical linked to cancer.
It's kind of a little bit frightening just because you don't know what's going in the air, even though they say it's not harmful.
And now the Texas Attorney General filing a lawsuit against ITC for violating the state's Clean Air Act.
A number of residents have also filed lawsuits against the company. The exact cause of the initial fire still under investigation. Whit?
For us in Houston, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We do want to turn now to the weather. Rob Marciano is here. Some parts of the country dealing with some severe flooding.
Yeah, and we've got more rain coming into that area. So, and this is just the first bout. We're going to have more flooding, as you can imagine, as we go deeper into spring. Let's get to St. Joseph, Missouri, where the Missouri River out and over its banks, cresting now, but the record stage there. So they do not want to see more water, and unfortunately, they're going to see a little bit of that. You couple that with a little bit farther north, we've got melting ice and ice jams that could exacerbate some of the flooding across the Minnesota River there in southwest Minnesota. So this is an ongoing situation as well. Look at all these flood alerts across the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers and their tributaries. Kansas City, you're going to get a crest today, although that city fairly protected for this round. But look at this, more rain coming with some embedded strong storms here north of Dallas, Oklahoma City, Wichita. This getting into those flooded areas. Rainfall should be held down, hopefully enough to not really make those rivers rise anymore. But strong storms potentially today. And then again, I think tomorrow, as this system pushes off towards the east. That's a quick check on what's happening weather-wise across the nation. It's time now for a look at your local forecast.
Hello and good morning, Washington. Still gusty out there this morning, winds up to 30 miles per hour, but those will diminish as we head through the afternoon and evening. 54 degrees to start the weekend. Hey, dry weekend ahead. It will be cold tonight, 20s into the mid-30s overnight, mainly clear skies. Mostly cloudy tomorrow, but it will be milder, 62 degrees as we head into early next week. This is the next system on the horizon. Chance for some rain. I think we could have up to 1/4 of an inch of rain on Monday under mostly cloudy skies.
Winds are howling here in the Northeast from an exiting storm. That plus a little sports, March Madness, so sports and weather, maybe some traffic as well.
We'll see
Later on in the next hour.
It's good to have you back on weekends, Rob. You know, it's one thing to play hooky on Weekend GMA, but Tom over here was a wreck when you missed World.